We know these are difficult and challenging times, and we invite you to stay connected through worship services and Bible studies, whether online or in person.
Now, here are our upcoming announcements for this week.
And a reminder, you can give online or via Zelle. Any question about giving may be directed to the Bethany Finance Department.
Supply all of our needs, Lord God, protecting us. We give you praise, Lord God. We lift up this Bible study tonight and this special things. We pray that we get something new and fresh from the Word that will help us to be better Christians. Pray, God, for this church as a whole. That's all the ministries, ministry leaders, Lord God. And we pray that we will grow as a church. We will grow spiritually first of all. Lord God, you will be with your will. So help us in those areas, Lord God. We will not give God this kind of things on ministers of this church. And then God, we selfishly pray for our churches and what we do now. All that you have called to preach and to pastor, Lord God. Bless them, Lord God. And then we lift up the men, women, boys and girls who are not saved. We ask, Holy Spirit, that you would touch and convict them. Help them to see, Lord, that they need you in their lives. Help them, Lord God, that think they're living right now, but they just don't know. If they would accept you, Lord God, they would have a real life, real living, Lord God. Now we lift up your people that are sick this evening, Lord God. Those mentally sick and physically sick. Bless your doctors, your nurses, your medicines, your caretakers, hospitals, wherever someone is sick, Lord God, we ask for the person. And then, God, you've got some children that are bereaved with loved ones, and ask that you will comfort them as they go through this dark time in their lives. Ease their pains, Lord God, and their grief, Lord God. So we just thank you for loving us, because we're not always lovable, Lord God. Thank you for this scene down the Spirit, God. Give you the praise and bless the worship service on Sunday. Lord, we're praying for extraordinary worship service. Bless the musicians, the choir members, the ushers, the ministers, our pastor. And we want to give you the glory in the worship service. These things we ask and thank you for in Jesus' name. Amen.
We just want to thank you for this morning, Father. This is have to give the light. And we just thank you for purpose. And if we know if we woke up this morning and we still have a purpose to our Heavenly Father, that you have an agenda for us, Heavenly Father. And we just want to be your agenda and not our agenda, Heavenly Father. We want to be guided by you, Heavenly Father. We just thank you for all that you're doing, Heavenly Father. we just ask you to just give us that special prayer right now, my Heavenly Father. I ask you to touch this as a whole, as a whole, my Heavenly Father. You know what each and every member of the congregation is in need of. And we just need you to touch us right now, my Heavenly Father, because we are begging to be the church that you would have us to be. We just want to be a guidance right now, my Heavenly Father. We want this community to know that Bethany is here, my Heavenly Father. When they see Bethany, they know that it is your people, my Heavenly Father. We just ask you right now in His only Son's name. Now we get my pops. Now we get my pops.
Your pops is my pops. I bet you have.
I knew, all right.
How you doing, Sister Lamont?
I'm good. I had to look for my keys for the second time.
What happens when you get older?
Huh?
You forget when you get older.
No, after I got done talking to you, I laid them down. I was sitting on them. Say what?
It sounds like somebody getting older.
I'm going back to the way. I'm having a pass on this stuff. From the wood yesterday. I told I've been eating sweets for the last 2 days.
In chapter 23, 2 Kings, chapter 23, 2 Kings, chapter 23.
Second Kings, Ooh, Lord, Jesus. Oh my God, it's all right.
Take up too much space.
Chapter 23. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord, and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. All the people stood for the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest, and the priests of the second order, and the keepers of the door, to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem, the fields of Kidron, carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. And he put down the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for the grove. And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah, and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba, and brake down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places came not up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among their brethren. He defiled Tophet, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom. No man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire to Golan. And he took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun at the entering in of the house of the Lord by the chamber of Nathan-Melech, the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and burned the chariots of the sun with fire. And the altars that were on the top of the upper chamber of the house, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord, did the king beat down and break them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mount of corruption, which Solomon, the king of Israel, had builded for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. And he brake in pieces the images, and cut down the groves, and filled their places with the bones of men. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, and made both that altar and the high place he brake down, and burned the high place, and stamped it small to powder, and burned the grove. And as Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were there in the mount, and sent and took the bones out of the sepulchres, and burned them upon the altar, and polluted it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he said, What title is that I see? And the men of the city told him, It is the sepulchre of the man of God, which came from Judah, and proclaimed these things that thou hast done against the altar of Bethel. And he said, Let him alone, let no man move his bones. So they let his bones alone, with the bones of the prophet that came out of Samaria. All the houses also of the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger, Josiah took away, and did to them according to all the acts that he had done in Bethel. And he slew all the priests from the high places that were there upon the altars, and burned men's bones upon them, and returned to Jerusalem. And the king commanded all the people, saying, Keep the Passover unto the Lord your God, as it is written in the book of this covenant. Surely there was not holden such a Passover from the days of the judges that judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor on the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, wherein this Passover was holden to the Lord in Jerusalem, over the workers with familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the images, and the idols, and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, did Josiah put away, that he might perform the words of the law which were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord. And like unto him was there no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses. Neither after him arose there any like him. Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherewith his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him withal. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city, Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said, My name shall be there. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. And King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Megiddo, when he had seen him. And his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. And Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abudal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Ammon, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoahaz away. And he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people of the land, of every one according to his taxation, to give it unto Pharaoh Necho. And Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done.
Any questions? About the similarities between
22 and 23. Much of what we talked about tonight, we'll talk about was covenant 22. The difference between 22 and 23 is there's a lot more detail in what Josiah actually accomplished. There's an outline here to kind of give you some idea of what he did through the reform. You have the renewal of the covenant found in those first 3 verses in chapter 23. You have the removal of idols from Judah, that's verses 4 through 14. 4 through 14. Removal of idols from Bethel, that's verses 15 through 20. Removal of idols from Bethel. Then you have the reinstitution of the Passover feast, that's verses 21 through 23. The reinstitution of the Passover feast, verses 21 through 23. Y'all say the check, they're going to come. She's going to be late, but she's going to do it.
Hey, Chad.
The removal of superstitions from Judah, verses 24 through 25. Again, those are the actions of Josiah. Remember, we studied King Josiah. He's the son of King before him. Now the king sent them together, all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem, to him. The king went up to the house of the Lord with all the men of Judah, and with him all of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great. And he read it, and they're hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the house of the Lord. Then the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and all his soul, to perform the words of his covenant that was written in the book. And all the people took a stand for the covenant. All the people took a stand for the covenant. The first 3 verses basically gives a picture of Josiah calling all of the nations together. Remember, he read it last week, chapter 22. He read or had the book. Remember, they were cleaning out the temple, and they found this book, which is what we can call the Bible. Basically, it was the book of Moses, the book of the law. Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And they hadn't really seen it during that lifetime, so he had it read. And when he had it read, he realized that they had fallen so short of what the Mosaic law said they should have been doing, that the Bible said he tore his clothes. But now we see him calling all the people. He wants the people to hear his law for themselves. He wanted read before him. And the Bible said, the people said, oh yeah, we all with it. We're going to do what it said. Jeremiah said they were saying it with their mouth, but with their hearts, they were really thinking about how they were going to keep on doing what they've been doing. So then basically you have King Josiah, who's serious. He's really, with all his heart, striving to please God. You have people saying they want to please God, but in their hearts, they really don't. Just like a lot of times it happens in church, people, they say the right thing, but their minds and their hearts are just not there. They're just not that committed. That's not something they wanted to do. So basically you have this false picture here. Here's this king who his whole heart is toward God. Now remember, God has already told him that he got this wrong, but they've been too wicked. And it's not going to happen in his lifetime.
But even though he knows it's not going to happen, he still goes through all of this effort, striving to reform Judah by going through all of these actions. And the people say they're going, but suspect. But let's go. Let's go. Verse 4. And the king commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, the priest of the second order, and the doorkeeper, to bring out the temple of the Lord, all the articles that were made for Baal and Asherah, and for all the hosts of heaven, to burn them outside Jerusalem in the field of Kidron, and carry their ashes to Bethel. First thing he does is tell them to bring everything out of the temple that was idol stuff to Baal. But basically, all of the things that they had collected for the idol gods. Baal, Asherah, and all that stuff, the host of heaven. He took all that stuff out and burned it. He burned it in the temple, he burned it in Kidron. And after he burned, he takes the ashes. He didn't even want the ashes there. He takes the ashes and takes them to Bethel. Come fix it, that's about 10 miles away. 10 miles away. He's trying to separate. We're talking about cleaning out the temple. He's trying to reform. He's trying to get things back to where it should be. They had all these idols. Remember, these are idols that are located inside the temple that has been built to worship God. Mm-hmm. They are idols, but they should have been worshiping God. But they got all these other idols in them. That's a sermon right there. Talking more about that. Look at then he removes the idol, the adulterous priests, whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah, in the places all around Jerusalem. And those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the hosts of heaven. And he brought out the wooden images from the house of the Lord, the brook Kidron, outside Jerusalem, burned it at the brook Kidron, and ground it in ashes, and threw its ashes over the graves of the common people. So now we see he goes a step further. He takes the adulterous priests, preachers, who were designated by the king, kings like Manasseh and all of them. They got these priests. Now they're offering sacrifice in the temple for these idols. They're supposed to be preachers, but they're really false prophets. And the Bible says, what did he say he did? He removed the idolatrous priests who the king had ordained. He got rid of them. False prophets, false preachers. They had the right titles, but they had the wrong attitude. In the right place, but with the wrong sermon. Took all that stuff and he burned again and grinded it to powder and took the powder and sprinkled it over the graves of common people. That was to say, basically, it wasn't to talk about the common people. It was saying that all this stuff is supposed to be so powerful, these gods are supposed to have so much power. It's just like dead. It really belongs to the grave. It really belongs to the grave. It really belongs to the grave. Verse 7. Then he tore down the ritual boots of the perverted persons that were in the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for the wood images. Read that out of yours, NIV first.
He also tore down the quarters of the male shrine prostitutes, which were in the temple of the Lord, and where women did weaving for Asher.
What you got? You got a King James version. Read that for me.
7
Verse 7.
says, he also tore down the quarter of the male shrine prostitutes that were in the temple of the
That
Lord.
ain't King James.
Huh?
And he break down the houses
Oh.
of the Sodomites
Yeah.
that were by the house of the Lord, where the women wove
Yeah, I know that.
for the grove.
You must have a new King James. What Clint read, he said,
I'm going to read.
male prostitute. Okay. King James,
Oh, okay, I got the King James.
it said sodomite, which is
Broke
more
down the
correct.
houses of the Sodomites.
One version translation I had says prostitute. Well, the prostitutes kind of, it's right, there are prostitutes, but really when you look at the original language, it's really talking about male prostitutes. I like the sodomy more than anything, because basically it talks about what you're dealing with is homosexuality. You're dealing with homosexuality.
What's wove hangings for the grove?
So what?
What's wove hangings for the grove?
Okay, what basically you have here is a church by the church. It was like booths by the temple. Talking about the hanging of the groves. The women would wove cloths, curtains. Some say the curtains were used for hanging from the prostitutes. The colors, it's like they do, they like a lot of colors. But some say, well, these booths, the curtains were really like petitions, walls. It's like tents. So they're hanging the petitions to compartmentalize the places where they're having sex.
Oh, okay.
See what I'm saying? So they don't want to be seen by everybody. So you have worship, instead of having a scripture read, praying, and some preaching and singing, what they would do is have sex. And basically what you have here is sodomy. Yeah, that word, sodomy. I'm trying to say the sodomites participating in this time. Now, see, sodomy deals with a particular kind of sexual behavior. Since it's going over, I can't say exactly what, but y'all supposed to know. You know, it's dealing with some other parts. Anal sex. I think I can say that. Say P or nothing. So that you have homosexuality being practiced in a religious posture and being validated. What I'm trying to get you to see is that the shape of that diverted nation wasn't too far from the shape of America today.
Yes, I can say it.
It's like, if you really want to get messed up, now you talk negatively about homosexuality, and they act like something wrong with you. It's almost like we're living in a time now when they want to make wrong right, and see what Josiah is doing. He's tearing down all of these corruptions. So he takes all these, pull these people out. He's killing folk. He's straightening out folk. He's tearing down walls. He's cleaning up the temple. So basically, what he's calling homosexuality is something that's wrong. Something that's wrong. Something that's wrong. I was sharing with the group this day. I had a lady running for office, and she came by and wanted my support. And she was talking good, and she wanted to take me out to lunch. I said, no, I'll take you to lunch. So I took her, she was taking me to Papados,
I didn't tell her, but basically I was gonna pay for the lunch. I didn't let her pay, because I don't want people to think they done bought you, especially for a cheap lunch. You're gonna buy me, it's gonna cost you a whole lot more than lunch. She said all the right things, she couldn't be fault, she wanted to do the right thing, blah, 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 okay? I already told her I'd give her my support, blah, blah. But while we were talking, I used a term you're not supposed to use. I turned the thing off. I said, sissies. Oh, she hadn't had time to turn it off. I was just teasing.
I could have muted it.
No.
You muted it.
A sissy is a term you should use. That's a derogatory term. But when I said that, her clearly it's like I slapped her. What you say? And I could see she had a problem with that. I said, sissies. And I said, oh, you must have, look, you had a son. I said, is your son homosexual? Don't get me wrong, I use crazy terminology, but I'm not homophobic. Well, the thing got me was that next Sunday, one of my ex-members called me and asked me would I support this same lady. Well, I'd already given my support, so now you got people calling me on a Sunday. Yeah, well, we got some people coming back, and they want to have remarks. I don't let politicians talk in my church. I said, well, they can come, I recognize them. So it wasn't long after that, these two white boys come in. They had the appearance of homosexuals, and I saw them. What's the point? And then it took the enlightenment on. See, this really is supposed to be a test for me. And see, let's understand, and folks need to understand today, that that's what Josiah had probably, is that being the people of God, we cannot hate anybody. Being the people of God, you can't have negative feelings about anybody because of their condition. But at the same time, being people of God, you can't validate something that's wrong and say it's right. If God calls it a sin, it's still a sin. That's right. Like one of my members called me and said, that means I got some friends want to get married. I said, okay, I'll marry anybody. Just tell them my requirement is that I counsel you before you get married. So he's counseled. And she said, well, not really anything homosexual. I said, girl, hang this phone up. I mean, why would you even ask me some mess like that? See, but that's the kind of stuff folks, they supposed to be, you're being tested. And we got out like they send the Archbishop of England was saying that we need to reinterpret the Bible so that we can now better minister to the new categories we have now. In other words, we're going to change the Bible so that certain sins are not pointed out. Well, no, you can't do that. No, I know, like Josiah, that sin is still sin. Now, again, I told you before, I'm not going to tell homosexuals you can't come to my church. I'm not going to discriminate. I'm not going to be homophobic. Anybody is welcome to come to church. Yeah. And I'm not going to be talking about homosexuality more than I talk about anything else. I mean, sin is sin, but I'm not going to, just like I wouldn't call whoremongering right when God calls it wrong. I'm not going to call gambling right. I'm not going to call murder right. I'm not going to call picking out on pork chop right. A sin is still a sin. Yeah. So if God calls it a sin, it's sin. It's not up to me to call it right. And homosexuals just like anything else. People can come, they can hear the word. They don't have to be picked on, but at the same time, a sin is still a sin. Y'all feel it? Yeah. But Josiah is trying to clean up. When he's trying to clean up, this is one of the things he did. Now that's not politically correct. Today that's not politically correct. You can get trouble. That can get us in trouble. Now, I found out some time ago that you can't grow a church in this environment unless you're politically correct or something. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I know one of the reasons why Bethel don't grow. They have some issues. Like I said, some people have problems with me, because, I'm going to talk about Solomon later, that, we live in a time now, people want you to be polished. You see, one of the problems people got with me, I'm educated. I'm educated.
But I'm not one of these fellas trying to look polished, trying to be politically correct all the time. That's not my goal. I'm sorry. I mean, see, I learned one time you got to be who you be. You can't be somebody else, And I'm not going to spend time trying to please jokers you can't please anyway. So that I know who I am and I know what I'm about. So that basically my goal is to preach the word, to make the gospel as plain as you possibly can so that people can understand the word of God. I couldn't care less if you don't think I'm polished or if I'm politically correct. That's not my job. Now, if you appreciate the word, preach the gospel, that's fine. But now you try to put me in some kind of, I had one of my mentors say, he was pastor of the Silver Stockton Church there in Beaumont. He said, man, my member got a problem with you because they can't pigeonhole you. They say you're too smart for them to call ignorant, but at the same time, you be saying stuff they don't like. You know what I'm saying? I said, I understand that. It's like I had one member say, their daughter was sitting in one of my sermons and counting the number of times I spit a bird. Sucker should have been listening to the sermon, counting how many times that the message was beating across her head. But that's the whole point. We live in a world that folk are more concerned with appearing to be something to folk. And that's the problem with a lot of our churches. We're trying to grow the churches and ready to compromise a lot of stuff that is diametrically opposite to what God is all about. Josiah said, no, I'm not going to do that. And so that's what happened in verse 7. Verse 8 says, and he brought all the priests from the cities of Judah and defiled the high place, defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense from Geba to Beersheba. Also, he broke down the high places at the gates, which were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua and the governor of the city, which were to be to the left of the city. Nevertheless, the priests, the high places, did not come up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brethren. He tears down all these places. He takes the priests that were defiled and basically put them in their places, pull them out, bring them down. These priests, again, were named by kings. These priests are valid. These are preacher pastors who are valid to hold their position. These are descendants of Levites. So they have a right to eat the food that's allocated for the Levites. Remember the Levites. Remember when Joshua was handing out the portions of land allocated to each tribe? Manasseh got a portion. Ephraim gets a portion. Judah gets their portion. Every tribe has a portion. But when he got to the Levitical tribe, they don't get a portion. Now, of course, they had, their house, the land for their houses. But they didn't get land like the other tribes. Why? He said, because they're supposed to live off of the tithes and offering that was given to the church, to the temple. They didn't get all of it. Some of it was there for, as you say, for the upkeep of the temple. Some was there, kept in the treasury, but there was a portion that was given to the Levitical tribe. In other words, all your high priests, that's why by the time these come to Saxon, they become rich suckers, man. Because you got, think about that. You got 12 tribes feeding one tribe. See, whenever you had a peace offering, a fellowship offering, part went to God, the other part went to the priests. That you had, in other words, part went to God. The priest represented God. The other part went to the person who gave him the sacrifice. So you eat part, I eat part. But God's part, like a burnt offering,
hard part was like the fat. The part you divide between the priest was the meat. Anyway, that's another sermon. What I'm trying to make is that all the food given to the Levitical tribe is then handed down. Of course, the high priest, he has a different position. You had the functioning priest who came and actually ministered in the temple. But like cousin Bobo and all of them, and children, all of them got a portion. Everybody had a time to come minister. Well, these people had a time to minister, but they weren't ministering in the temple because they didn't want to come to the altar. They was staying at home, ministering in other places. They didn't want to come to the altar. They didn't want to come to the altar. They didn't mind eating the food for the holy family. Eat the food for the Levitical tribe. Eat the food for a person of God. Eat the food for special people. But we don't want to come to the altar. I thought about that. God was saying, the altar. Tell you about the altar. You know, the altar that we have on front when you come up to pray. That's where you go to altar you. So many people in church never have been to the altar. You got some people that ain't never been to the altar in their life. I had a lady, church, I call her person, the worst member I ever pastored. She's going to be with the Lord, I hope she's with the Lord. Jesus saved anything, but she has some issues. She came in one day, why you let that girl keep coming up there Sunday after Sunday? She always coming up there asking for prayer. I say, because she has legitimate concerns that she wants the church to pray. She don't need to be coming up there with the same stuff. I said, she's not coming to say. Legitimate concerns, she's trying to put on. He can stop that. I said, you know, I recall I never seen you at there. Maybe instead of me stopping her, I need to start you. I don't need that. Pray for myself. Well, see, here's my point. Is that she had a problem with somebody else coming to the altar. Okay? But she doesn't see the need to come to the altar herself. She had, so glad to see you, chapter 23. She doesn't see a need to come to the altar. She doesn't see a need to seek prayer. She thinks she's too spiritually strong. They have to come and ask the church to pray for her. That's the problem we have with some folks. They think they're too good. So that basically they have this holier than thou posture, but in actuality, what they're really saying, I don't need to be altered. I don't need to be altered. I was telling Dr. Gregory, Pastor First Baptist. Joel Gregory. Joel Gregory, Pastor First Baptist. He had some complications. They got rid of it. He says that he credited the black church. O.E.K. Bailey brought him to L.K. Williams Ministers Institute and introduced him to us. He says he credited the black church for kind of giving a boost to his ministry. But powerful preacher. I told him, I said, well, one thing I have with you, Dr. Gregory, is you check your roots because you preach too much like a black man. That's another sermon. But he was a powerful preacher. And I was telling about the watermelon preacher that I went to my watermelon doctor, McKissick, had this function in his house. That's what we were meeting about, trying to be more inclusive with helping Dr. Gregory preaching some of our black poets. And when I talked to him in private, I said, man, I don't mind coming to my church, but I don't have a whole lot of money. Man, don't worry about that. I don't have money. So he came to mine. I'm telling you all this. He came to Bethel to preach. You remember he said? You remember when he got through preaching, he called for an altar call. Man, Negroes I ain't never seen come to the altar. Come to the altar. I mean, never don't even think about coming up. Oh man, they could. I really don't know if they had anybody still in their city. I mean, I need to get a white man call off there every Sunday. It's almost like when I call for the altar there. Oh, but this white boy come in and call my just they come out of the woodwork. They don't come from outside, come in all this. You know how many people never come to the altar for prayer? How many people never see a need to ask God to help them, ask the church to pray for them, or pray with them, or going through something? We so strong, but that's a sign of weakness if you come down there. No, at some point, he a priest, supposed to be priest. But they offer sacrifice, but not at the altar. Offering sacrifice, but they're offering at other altars. You hear about all these idol gods. See, you got too many altars in some of our churches. Both have one altar for God, but the problem is we got too many other altars. That's why they can't come up front, because they got their altars in the back. Somebody got an altar in the back. Somebody got another altar. Don't get me started talking about altars. You know, I'll start calling names. I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. They get real upset when you start talking about certain things, because they're more committed to idol altars than the altar of God. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places did not come up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem. They ate unleavened bread among their brothers. Do you remember when Jeroboam, the northern kingdom, and he made those two golden calves? He told them to worship golden calves. Remember, he didn't want to let them come to Jerusalem because he's afraid they start cutting too often. They commit to coming to Jerusalem. And so he had these golden crafts. And this is your God. And they start praying to these idol gods. This is one of the things that Josiah was working against. Here are priests who want to claim to be priests of God, but don't want to come to the altar of God. Verse 10, and he defiled Topheth, which is the valley of the son of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire of Moloch. Now, verse 10, talking about the defiled Topheth. Topheth, it's like a place where they play a lot of drums. These drummers. They were trying to play the drums so loud so you couldn't hear the cries of the babies, the boys and the girls who were being offered to idol gods. So basically, we had parents who were offering their children on the altar to idol gods. He said he came and he pulled all that mess down. Just think about how sorry some people are. They don't want to have children no way, and they use that as an excuse to kill their children. They're going to give them a sacrifice. People sacrifice them now in different ways. They let their boyfriend beat them up. They see people chaining folk and starving their own children. But basically, you had people killing folk in the name of their God, not Yahweh. In the name of Molech. They won't kill them. So they playing the drums, they don't have to hear the crying, hear the noise of Israel. Verse 11, then he removed the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun at the entrance of the house of the Lord by the chamber of Nathan Neelah. And the officer who was in the court, and he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. But they had all these nice looking horses and chariots. Stuff was pretty, man. It's like some pretty cars in church. But the problem is they use them for the wrong purpose. Use them to be worshipped for idols. Bring attention to the wrong place. And the altars that were on the roof and the upper chambers of Ahaz, which the king of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord, the king broke down and pulverized them, and threw their dust into the brook Kidron. He took all these altars and he mashed them down with powder, it says, and threw the dust in the brook of Kidron. Then the king defiled the high places that were east of Jerusalem, which were on the south of the Mount of Corruption, which Solomon, king of Israel, had built for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, Milcah, the abomination of the people of Ammon. He broke in pieces the sacred pillars and cut down the wooden images and filled their places with the bones of men. He's just tearing down stuff. Everywhere there worshiping idols, he's tearing them down. And look at what he says with defiling the high places where Solomon had built. Solomon. How is a man who is the wisest man that ever lived do something so stupid? This is one of the instances where you see Solomon. Remember, I told you, we talked about it before. He got all these wives. Somebody said he had 700 wives. One place he probably got to the point of 1,000 wives. He is superior to his daddy David, because David couldn't build a temple because he had too much blood on his hands. Solomon didn't have no blood on his hands, because what he'd do, he'd marry the king's daughter. So he ends up with all these wives. But you know, this diplomacy, he marries the daughter. The king is not going to attack his son-in-law. So they get along, everything's fine, until you got all these women who are living in this strange land, and they want to go to church. Well, wise, smart daughter. Instead of having to pay all this money to send them to their hometown to worship, he decided, we're going to build them a temple right here. The only problem is that he's building a temple for their convenience, but at the same time, he's defiling the land of God. So now he got all these idol temples for his women to worship. But it's in Israel that is supposed to be the land of God's worship. I ain't messing up. He's smart, but he's stupid. And then, you know, you ain't going to be going with that woman kissing on him too long before she actually come to church with him. And before you know it, Solomon is going to church. Oh, well, you know, we can just like, I'm going to go there, but I ain't going to bow down to the God. But the fact you go to the church at all, you messing up. And so this is what he does, and that's his rationale. But the bottom line, he promotes corruption in Israel. People start worshiping these idol gods. Supposed to be for his wife, but end up corrupting the nation. Got a whole lot of folk worshiping idols being corrupted. But when Josiah comes in, man, he comes through like a wrecking ball. Tearing all that mess down. I don't care who it was. If it was wrong, if it's against God, if it's anything other than God, I'm going to tear down. God said, I am a jealous God. Thou shalt have no other God. Over the altar that was at Bethel, a high place, which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who made idol. I'm talking made Israel sin. It made both the altar and the high places to break down. He burned the high places and crushed it into powder, and burned the wooden images. As Josiah turned, he saw tombs that were there in the mountains, and he sent and took the bones out of the tomb and burned them on the altar, and defiled according to the word of the Lord, which the men of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then said he, what gravestone is this that I see? So he get there and he said, all these defiled places, and they got these people been worshiping this stuff, and they bury them in these places. He said, I'm gonna burn all the bodies, where they got the bodies turn to bones. He's burning it and tearing down the altars and burning the bones. And he gets to this one grave, and they got an image there. He said, what's this? Oh, this is the prophet. This is like 300 years before. This is the prophet who foretold what you're doing right now. 300 years ago. Oh, we ain't gonna touch his bones. Leave his bones alone. He came there and pointed in Jeroboam's face and told him what God was going to do. So the men of the city told him it is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel. He said, let him alone. Let no one move his bones. But he let his bones alone with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. Now Josiah also took away all the shrines and the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger. And he did to them according to all the deeds he had done in Bethel. He executed all the priests of the high places who were there on the altar of the burnt men's bones on them. He returned to Jerusalem. Then the king commanded all the people, saying, keep the Passover of the Lord your God, as written in this book of covenant, such as the Passover surely never had been since the days of the judges, which judges Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was held before the Lord in Jerusalem. They had slid so badly, they hadn't even observed the Passover. All those years, hadn't had one in a while. And so he instituted the Passover. Moreover, the Passover was held before the Lord in Jerusalem. Moreover, Josiah put away those who consulted mediums and spiritists, all these fortune tellers, soothsayers, got rid of all them suckers. Household gods, COD gods, idols, all the abominations that were seen in the land of Judah and Jerusalem, that he might perform the words of the Lord which were written in the book of Hilkiah the priest, found in the house of the Lord. Somebody read verse 25 for me.
And I consider him was there no king before him that turned to the Lord without his heart and without his soul, without his might, according to all the law of Moses, neither after him arose there king like him.
Wow. Did you see what God said? There was never a king like him before. All there was anybody who turned wholly to the Lord. Here's a man who sought the Lord with all his heart, who wanted to do God's will. He's got people who say they want to do the right thing, but they're not doing it. Read the next verse.
Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherewith his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him with that.
He wants to please God with all his heart. So because I'm still going to put a whooping on this. Because they messed up. They've been sinning for a long. He talked about Manasseh, but you know, y'all been through it. They were doing that before Manasseh. Before Hezekiah. They kept turning away from the Lord. They kept turning away from the Lord. And here's this king whose heart is wholly for God. Now in chapter 22, God told him, he says, I'm gonna have to put some burden on it. But don't worry about it. Say, because it's not gonna happen during your life. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Hezekiah said, oh, that's good. That's good. Josiah, now God has told him, you're gonna be all right, but I'm gonna destroy it. In spite of all of that, he starts with chapter 23. And he starts trying to get these people back to God. He goes in all of this effort to clean Israel, clean Judah. He's going in the temple and clean out all these idols, all of this negative stuff that is against God. He puts all his energy and straight up, and he knows that God's gonna still put a whooping on him. What's his motivation? He's not doing it for self-aggrandizement. He's not doing it trying to help himself. He's trying to get the people to turn back to God. Maybe if they come back, maybe if they humble themselves, maybe if they turn to God and beg for mercy, maybe God would have mercy. This stuff got him so bad. And you know, he's a man after God's own heart. Kind of like David. He wants to please God. He wants to please God. He wants to please God. He could have said like Hezekiah, well, as long as I do something, I'm good. No. He's doing everything he can, trying to get them to do the right thing. They don't want to do right. Their motive's not right, but he's going to use you to his dying breath. He's going to strive to win people to the Lord, to do God's will, to clean out the corruption, to pull out the negative. Wow. That's kind of, see, like to me, that's the kind of person God is looking for. That's the kind of person we need today. Whether it's politically correct or not, I'm going to do God's will. Whether it's popular or not, I'm going to do God's will. Well, whether it pleases the folk or not, I don't care what the people say, I'm going to please God. Well, last he allows, with all that goodness, he allows himself to go in the wrong direction. He gets involved in the fight, gets himself killed. And the Bible said they buried him with his father. He also, I'm talking about the brother King. So Chastity is the last one in, she's the first one to like she's going to speak. Okay, he dies. Who becomes king? His son, Jehoahaz. Now he's got two sons. Jehoahaz. Say what? Well, he was evil. Josiah is one of the best kings they ever had. His son is wicked. Think about it, what I just said. See, that's validation what we're talking about. How you get from a Josiah who's seeking God, who just got to clean up everybody, and as soon as he dies, his son, evil. He does in 3 months. He just king for 3 months. And he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He messed up. 3 minutes. Now, this king, Pharaoh Nico comes. He's in charge. Now, he's the one who killed the dad. He comes, he takes Jehoiakim out of office and put his brother Eliakim in office. He becomes the king. We're going to talk about him next week, so I don't spend a lot of time on him. But what he does, he changes his name from Eliakim to what? Jehoiakim. Y'all want to make a distinction. Jehoaz, H-A-Z is the first one. K-I-M, Kim is the second. Eliakim is changed to Jehoiakim. Kim stays. Same people. Same name, different name. We'll talk about it some more. I'll combine the last part of this chapter with the first part of the next chapter, which finishes up with Jehoiakim. Questions, comments? You got your hand up and you just stretching.
No, I'm asking a question.
Okay, I didn't know.
We're stretched at the same time.
It's hard to
You
tell.
was asleep.
Yeah, right.
Put your yellow in your mind, Chase.
So, same question I had the last time. Why is it that almost every king had to go in and clean up?
Every king didn't go in and clean up.
Just about.
Every king needed to go in and clean up. The problem was they didn't have enough kings cleaning up. They were busy dirtying up. That's called a road. How can the king clean up? Just look at him. Hezekiah is the last one we heard king clean up. But remember, Hezekiah actually 15 more years. And then he's the one God tells, I'm going to have to mess this stuff up because they turned away from me. He has a son named Manasseh. Manasseh ain't did no cleaning up. Manasseh served longer than any other king. He ruled for 55 years. And all he did was mess up.
But then you
Got who?
got the king right now. He had to clean up what?
Manasseh is his granddad. Ain't it? Who's after Manasseh?
Manasseh was Ammon.
Ammon. It said Ammon was a good king. Was Ammon a great king? Did he clean up anything? You got 55 years of messing up. You got Ammon, he comes and mess up some more. Now you got Josiah come to clean up. He was the first one. He was clean. Hezekiah was supposed to be a better king than a lot of ones before him. But there's a lot of junk he kept there. All that mess you talking about, all the items and stuff that was in the temple, he allowed that stuff to stay. See, that's the problem. We talk about cleaning up. Have you ever been to people who say they clean up their house, and when they get through the house, they're dirty? When the church hired, I remember a church, I ain't gonna tell you which one, hired a man to be the janitor. And we're good. He don't clean up right. But now, if a man can't clean up his own house right, what makes you think hiring him to clean up the church gonna be the best? The one thing I learned in my lifetime, everybody don't know how to clean up. Some people are filthy. So if you want it clean, you gotta, you want a house clean, you gotta get a woman. I see some filthy women too. It's not about sex, it's about who wants to clean up. So that when you start talking about cleaning up Israel, are you gonna clean up? Maybe they weren't cleaning up. Look at all them judges. Just go through the list. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did evil in the sight of the Lord. You get a whole lot of that. Samson, strongest man ever lived. How much cleaning up he did? Cleaning up. Got a lot of women. Got the fool. He didn't do a whole lot. He killed some Philistines, but he didn't do a whole lot of cleaning up. clean up them. He ain't right. No, they wasn't clean up. There was few and far between. So you get a man like Josiah, he stands up like a thumb on your finger, on your hand. He tried, and he cleaned up a lot. So see, out of all that cleaning we read tonight, out of all that stuff, 3 months later, all right back. Like me preaching a sermon, Holy Ghost moving. Woo! I'm gonna do the right thing. The next Sunday, still in the same spiritual condition.
So was it really clean? So it really wasn't cleaned up then?
They weren't clean.
They were just acting.
Pretending. I told you from the start, like, you went here to go poke out the guy. She came in today, she missed it. The first thing I said was, Josiah was dedicated to reforming, helping the people behind. They were saying the right words with their mouths, their hearts. With their mouths, they were saying, yes, we agree with what you're saying. With their heart, they were still thinking about what they're going to do. It's like to come to church and say, Lord, help me live a better life. Let me live a clean life. Help me stop doing the stuff I've been doing. But in the back of your mind, you already got a reservation. You already want to do something that you ain't supposed to do. You already got your idol that you put ahead of God. You feel? Am I making sense? Yeah. It's a sad story. One of the saddest things, when you read through Judges, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, anytime you read any history on Israel, that's the story. In Genesis, it's supposed to be God's people, God's chosen people, with God. Abraham, father of the faith. Look at homeboy. Can't wait on God. He said he got to marry his wife's servant, have a baby. God said, no, my chosen one's gonna come out of your wife, Sarah. She's too old. Sarah starts laughing. That's a joke. Look at Jacob. Jacob wants the birthright. The homeboy, he's so tricky. Him and his mama, they gonna lie, scheme, got skin on him. Lie to his dad so he get a blessing. That sounds like somebody trusting God. Joseph's brothers want to sell him into slavery. They didn't do it, but they had planned to do it. They got him in a pit. He thinks they sold him because when people pulled him out the pit, sold him into slavery. So he figured his brothers went into cahoots. Brothers don't know when Reuben comes out to sneak him out the pit, he's gone. They don't know what happened, so they lie. Take his coat, put blood on it, lie to his daddy. So by the time they see him, they don't even recognize him. Because they know he's dead. People of God. What about that? How many people come to church really want to change for the better? What about you? Any other questions, comments? Who am I doing this business? What's your name? Glory. Glad to have you, man. What's your name? Carl. Be glad to have you too. Well, pretty little girl. How old are you? 4? 5. That's big for 5. old lady now. How old is she? 3? Her birthday just passed. She's 3. She's born in July. Oh, April. Okay. That's close. That's close. Can't make July, you make April. All right. Anybody else got a question, comment? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Well, y'all helped to count a whole lot tonight. We got 11. And we have 13 today, so y'all came close.
3 on 1.
Well, Coach was here today, the day session. Y'all remember this Sunday to thank the men that kept clean up after the picnic. I forgot to mention that, along with so the 2 women, LaWanda and Michelle helped clean up.
And Crystal, easy.
Crystal helped too.
Yeah, she helped it. She helped clean up. Yeah. And Bubba did the cooking.
I know, I meant, that's the next thing I was saying, remind me to mention that Coach and Bubba, see all three members of the kids. Coach and Bubba did the barbecue. I was going to ask them, did Hardy do it tonight? They said he just thought to do it. They won't give him credit for cooking. Jerry. We do thank the great couple, Reverend Sister. What y'all saying back there?
Chicken wings.
Well, they said, boy, put this putting them things. I'm so glad I got mine out of there and put some in my truck. If I hadn't done that, I never would have tasted it. I come in, I look at it. I mean, you got a big old heat. 20 pounds, man, a big old pan.
How many pounds?
Just bubbling over.
20 pounds.
20 pounds. And I'm seeing all that chicken. I didn't know that gonna last. You got sausage and wieners, you know. And so somebody, Kathy, said she hadn't tasted the chicken. I said, come on, brother, taste these wings. And we got, I ain't never enough gravy at the bottom of the thing. I said, why these greedy jumping and they that stuff, man? They wrong it out. I don't know if they did that for the kids got there and the kids got it, or they ate them up before the kids got it. They were no chicken wings now. They were good though. I can testify. I tried, if I know you in Texas, I would say Chester, why were you at the picnic?
I was there.
You were here?
Yeah.
Girl, you didn't forget the conversation. Yeah, you forgot food too. Forgot the thing trying to. Yeah, he didn't forgot. He didn't forgot. Remember she was watching her food.
I was supposed to talk about that Sunday.
So glad you did.
Don't worry, I'm gonna get you Sunday. We'll get you Sunday. But I forgot, because I meant to mention the men cleaned it up. I forgot to mention them. I forgot the cooks. So we'll take care of you, son. I know you felt left out when I was calling your name.
Cool.
Because you was watching your food.
I was like,
I know Miss Women. God bless
She was
you.
praying, boy. She was praying. She was praying that hard in church.
as soon as you got out there, I said, okay, God.
Well, I know God answered prayer.
Focus on something else.
So you get a chance to pray next Sunday too. You'll see the Lord touch my heart. All right, then. That's all stand. For the closing prayer, we know we're gonna pray it. I need to talk with you. After the dedication. Who will get the closing prayer? You got the chance in it.
She called on the baby.
She trying to make the baby pray.
She said, Chloe.
That's the doggone shit. Oh, pray.
Heavenly Father, we want to thank you, Lord, for all that you have done for us, Lord. Father God, we want to thank you for this lesson, Father God. Help us to leave whatever we can, Father God. We ask you, Lord, that you bless not only this Friday, Lord, bless Sunday morning service, Father God.
Yes.
Lord, we pray for a powerful, powerful service, Father God. Get us through this week, Father God.
Yes.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Say amen. Thank y'all for coming.
Amen.